Traders, how are you? With Marcello, founder of the Day Trading Academy. Today we're doing the recap of what happened in the markets last week. Musk is trying to convince Trump to give everybody $5,000 in a check back with all the money that they've saved with the Doge department, the Department of Government Efficiency. We have blackouts in places like Cuba, and we also have the market tanking on some really bad economic news. Let's go ahead and get started. The tariff wars looks like it's going to continue. Now Trump is starting to threaten 25% tariffs on cars, semiconductors, and also medicines. Microsoft shares rose on more than 1% on the news that they unveiled a quantum computing chip, which is the first ever. This is I don't know if you know how the computer chips work, but essentially every time they go up another level, let me explain it this way. The earthquake classification system, if there's a 3.0 earthquake or a 4.0 earthquake, every single time you go up a number like that, it's literally 100 or 1,000 times more powerful. And that's kind of how it works with the computing chips. Now that they're going up another level with quantum, that means it's going to revolutionize everything. Investors were cautious this week with Walmart's information that the strong results that they had may not continue. They're looking for weaker than expected sales guidance for 2026. Walmart, remember, is the largest retailer in the world, one of the largest employers in the world as well, at least the largest employer in the US, if I'm not mistaken. But since there are so many people that go and shop at Walmart, that's a good indication of what's happening with the consumer. Remember, the economy in the United States is almost 70% consumer spending. So Walmart, basically the biggest store chain in the United States, when they're saying, well, maybe we're not going to sell as much in the future, that means the consumer isn't doing as well, which means that might affect 70% of the economy in the United States, which means the global economy as a whole as well. You see kind of how you connect the dots there? The Friday, there was almost $1 trillion taken out of the stock market, the worst day of 2025. All of the stock markets in the United States were negative. In the Communist Republic of Canada, they went down 1.21%, even though the S&P 500 did hit a record high. Overseas market news, the European markets were mostly mixed, with Russia being the biggest positive there. Latin America was mostly lower. The Bovespa in Brazil, which is the biggest market in all of Latin America, they went down 0.85%. Africa and the Middle East, mostly higher. Egypt is the biggest winner there. And in the far, far east, Asia, Australia, that whole area, the Pacific, the Hong Kong Hang Seng market was the biggest winner at 3.79%. Bitcoin and crypto, really good news for the crypto bros. Coinbase, which is the largest exchange in the United States for cryptos, is announcing that the Justice Department is agreeing to drop their enforcement action. Their shares went up 3%. Basically, there was a really negative idea of crypto in the previous Biden administration. So they were just doing random investigations and trying to, I wouldn't say necessarily shut it down, but they were making things extremely hard for everybody. Now Trump is in, the pendulum has swung the other way. He has a crypto task force. He wants to become that make United States the crypto capital of the world. So that's really good news for crypto bros anyway. The SEC under Trump obviously is going to move in a different direction to be able to welcome crypto rather than shun it. For the week, Bitcoin is lower, 0.95% lower to 96,706. In commodities and energy, U.S. egg prices are reaching an all-time high of almost $5 a dozen. Now you know why all those Latin people have those roosters in your yard. I remember when I was younger growing up, they would always wake me up, those damn roosters. Guyana, which is a very small country on the tip of North America, just to the right of Venezuela, north of Brazil, they're going to start producing 1 million barrels of oil a day after they made an agreement with France's Total Energy, an oil consortium. That's going to be almost 1% of global supply. Remember that there was a little bit of a skirmish between Venezuela and Guyana in the Amazon area, northern Amazon, where they found a lot of oil, and it used to be part of Venezuela and it was disputed, and now it's part of Guyana, but Venezuela didn't do anything about it. Anyway, so Guyana is going to be really rich soon. Crude oil prices are at a 2-month low. US crude went down to 70.40. Brent is at 74.43. They both went down almost 6%. Gold hit a new record high, 2,954. It was up 2.62% for the week. It ended up at 2,936.30. Silver 0.96% to 32.54. Cacao and coffee finally came down quite a bit as well. Coffee is down quite a bit from its recent market highs. And in the financial and banking news, New Zealand's central bank cut their interest rates by 0.50% to 3.75, marking their fourth straight cut due to the low inflation. And in economic news, Japan's economy grew by much more than expected, 2.8% in the fourth quarter instead of 1%. And Mexico's economy shrank Q4 for the first time in over 3 years. Maybe that's what happens when you vote for a communist president. Their central bank is expecting lower growth in 2025, worst annual results since 2020. That was the pandemic year when they got hit really hard by the pandemic. And the Q4, the GDP in some of the primary industries that they have went down by 8.5% in farming, fishing, and mining. Another thing that's really interesting that's happening with Mexico is that the United States government declared the cartels, the drug traffickers, as terrorists, which means that they can take action against them. And now the president of Mexico is starting to pass laws to protect the cartels instead of doing, for example, what Bukele did in El Salvador, where he literally built a huge prison, rounded up all the criminals, and put them in the prison like they should be. U.S. manufacturing grew slower than expected. Meanwhile, services unexpectedly contracted as well. That isn't good news for the economy. And the U.S. housing market declining by more than expectations in January, went down by 4.9% to just over 4 million units. Data far worse than expected. In political news, we talked about it last week, where these audacious statements that Trump is saying about tariffs and all this threats that he's going to do seem to be more like a negotiating tactic rather than trying to destroy the U.S. and the economy, basically. But remember the results that he got, where he threatened Canada and Mexico with tariffs and essentially destroy their economies unless they just protected the border and stopped drugs from coming through on the border and illegal immigration as well. And they buckled. They agreed to what Trump wanted, and now Panama is doing the same. Remember, Trump mentioned that he wanted to take back the Panama Canal, which even though he says it bombastically, right, in a way he does have a point, because there was a treaty signed between Panama and the United States, where if there's an adversarial country that is controlling the Panama Canal, that essentially isn't allowed. And if you guys don't know the history of the canal, the U.S. built it, paid for it, gave it away for $1, and then Hong Kong was running it. Hong Kong essentially was independent before, until the British gave it back to China. So since Hong Kong was running it, then now China is running it, which kind of runs into that treaty, which is basically what Trump was trying to talk about. Well, now Panama is saying that they're going to reject Chinese influence over the canal, and they're not going to renew the contract that they had with them. So it looks like some more results from Trump. So it looks like it, he might say it bombastically, but it looks like he's using it as a tactic to get what he wants. We'll see what happens with the other stuff as well, like Greenland, for example. Sweden and Finnish police are investigating another suspected case of sabotage. There have been multiple cuts to fiber optic internet cables on the seafloor. There's been another one now as well. And now, according to RFK, which is the new health secretary in the United States, which was confirmed a few weeks ago, if you take the flu shot, you're now 4.4 times more likely to get ill. And it was actually a Pentagon paper that was issued on the subject. And Yale researchers identify, be careful how I say this, but if you took the thing in your arm from the pandemic, basically, which is linked to quote unquote long COVID, you can be getting brain fog, dizziness, tinnitus, and exercise intolerance. The findings show immune changes, lingering spike proteins, and reawakened Epstein-Barr virus. And one of the things they found is, to put it in other words, they basically put AIDS in the shot and the thing in your arm in the pandemic. Remember, I got banned. They took down 1 or 2 channels on YouTube. Hopefully I don't get a flag for saying all this stuff, but remember, the preppers were right. Oh, where's my button at? Hold on. Give me a second. Trump and Musk are discussing sending U.S. taxpayers $5,000 using the Doge, the Department of Government Efficiency Savings. As of right now, they've saved over $126 billion. If numbers are right, 1/3 of all the people receiving Social Security a year is fraudulent. They found over 44 million people that are supposedly over 100 years old. There was people on the list that were 150 to 200 years old, when the oldest registered person in the United States is only 114 years old. A Hyundai auto plant in Alabama was caught using children as young as 12 years old. And this isn't a conspiracy. This is actually on the mainstream news if you guys want to Google it. And that was found by an ICE raid. And after Brazil's top prosecutor charged previous President Bolsonaro against plotting a coup in 2022, if he's convicted by the Supreme Court, he could land in prison. Kind of sounds what they were trying to do to Trump. And in corporate news, Tesla climbed 1.82%, posting much better results on top and bottom lines. Shake Shack, the popular burger chain, went up 11% after they reported much better results in quarter 4. Their total revenue went up by over 14%, and they also opened about 26 new stores. Southwest Airlines is looking to cut 15% of their corporate jobs, or about 1,700 people or so. The move, the CEO said, is unprecedented. We had another plane crash. If you guys saw the all-female plane from Delta Airlines. Well, it was a regional jet, but there's, just to let you know, there's another one that fell. And Rivian Automotive slid 4.7% after they forecasted much less deliveries next year. Less deliveries that are coming this year compared to 2024. They did, however, see the first gross quarterly profit margin, which is great. International news in Cuba. Remember what you get for when you vote for these communists. Well, they didn't vote for the communists, but, you guys get my drift. They're having a serious problem with the electricity. Some people are out of electricity for over 20 hours a day, and just fuel shortages, a lot of problems there. And an interesting fact, the classic view of history is that we all came from Africa 1.8 million years ago. People went through the Bering Strait, through Russia, down the Bering Strait, and down through the Americas. And now they have new evidence that in Romania, there were people there as of 2 million years ago, potentially changing the storyline. If you guys haven't seen Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix by Graham Hancock, highly recommended. It presents a different theory of maybe what happened in history. That's the news for this week, guys. Let me know if you guys have any questions. Don't forget to subscribe. And remember, the preppers were right.